By coincidence, David and I chatted at the Capitol yesterday for about an hour and a half. And I would like to address a question over here about, gee, it seems to me that that would be a job for Laurie Swanson. Within the Attorney General's office, there is a Medicaid fraud control unit that is supposed to investigate fraud in the state of Minnesota. Now, David is not the only one who accidentally stumbled upon something funny going on with the HMOs. About 15, 16 years ago, I accidentally stumbled upon it also. And I guess I didn't think it was anything fraudulent. I just thought it was something really dumb that our state and the Department of Human Services is trying to do. And it involved, they weren't called block grants, they were called 1115 waivers, in which the state of Minnesota would then get a block of money, of both Medicare and Medicaid money, and then they could use that to pay off the HMOs. This was particularly being tried in Hennepin County, and I lived in Edina at the time. I thought it was odd, and so I went to, at that time, Congressman Jim Ramstad, who was our congressman, and I shared the information with him. And he said, you know, Connie, this does sound odd, and he said, I will try to get you in touch with people at the state level whom you can chat with, and if that doesn't work, I will personally take you to Washington, D.C. to talk to the people there. Within 24 hours of the Attorney General's office, the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit being informed that I was going to Washington, D.C. to whistleblow, and I didn't even know I was whistleblowing. I just thought this was something really dumb that was being done. Within 24 hours, my husband's clinical psychological practice was under investigation by the Attorney General Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. Believe it or not, this whole thing is so incredible. They trumped up phony charges against my husband and against me. They were not planning on doing it against me because they just weren't. I guess I opened my mouth too often. And we believe that the reason they came after us was to prevent me from going to Washington, D.C. and exposing this. Because it sounds a little bit like a mini case of what David is talking about. And who knows, but as it turned out, phony charges were brought against my husband and me, went to trial, no jury, and I was thrown in prison for 2 years. Now, eventually, Dave and I end up talking to the same investigator, Gary Nelson, with the Office of Investigation for the Office of the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. He goes through all the documentation, and there was also an attorney in Washington, D.C. who said, but there's no crime here. So the third in command, Sharon Colby Elbert, from the Office of the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, who was in charge of all 50 Medicaid units and could cut off every dime of Medicaid money to the state if the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit was doing something like this, wrote Governor Pawlenty a letter, Laurie Swanson a letter, James Nobles, the legislative auditor, a letter, and the two co-chairs of the Legislative Audit Commission. To this day, no one has done anything about it. It has been a runaround, a runaround, and a runaround.
What did Ramsden do, other than squeal?
Oh, no, Ramstad never squealed. It wasn't Ramstad. It was something that happened totally by accident. Someone from the Department of Human Services accidentally talked to a contract employee we had, and apparently just said, well, what do you do for Dr. Neal? And he said, oh, well, and Connie is thinking about going to Washington, D.C. about this, and there were other things going on. This whole thing was creating some conversation in the healthcare industry at the time. But nothing has ever been done. I am still in the legislature, talking to legislators along with my 87-year-old mother. Chatted with David yesterday. I don't know how many legislators I've chatted with. And it's as if you run around in circles because the Office of the Investigation for the OIG in Minnesota, which is in St. Paul, said that they have to work with the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit in the Attorney General's office, so they don't want to investigate the people they have to work with. And so essentially what I'm saying is there is literally no oversight whatsoever in the state regarding this. And if the HMOs want to do whatever, there is no Medicaid Fraud Control Unit to go in and check on the fraud, despite the fact that the taxpayers pay for it, and then the federal government reimburses about, I think, 60% or so. So it's a mess. And I don't feel real, what do I say? I don't feel real hopeful unless someone like Michelle Bachmann really gets in there and takes up this fight. We need someone like her.
And
And obviously.
As I was reading some of the testimony that David gave at this committee hearing on April 25th, as I was reading his testimony, I was reminded of the comments of former President John Fitzgerald Kennedy when he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And here we have people not only just asking, what can my country do for me? We have people who are very deliberately defrauding, cheating the country for their own agendas. So among other things, we need a reformation of patriotism, honesty, integrity, character, and we need to be promoting these things as well as the law. But I also appreciate Ronald Reagan's very wise statement, which was trust but verify. And we are short on the verifying part. And really the Medicaid system is created to put trust in the states to administer the programs appropriately. And what we know is that that trust is not sufficient. And so the federal government has to verify. This is what Michelle Bachmann's bill is all about. But in Minnesota, too, we have to do what we can to recover what's been stolen. And we have no guarantee